What's up, boxing fans? I'm Michael Montero from Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of May 7th. Man, it's already May. This year is flying by. And, you know, this year in boxing got off to a slow start, but it's really been heating up. This week, the biggest fight so far of the year, at least the biggest pay-per-view event, you could argue, of the year so far. Canelo-Khan is here. It's fight week. Some news and notes to talk about real quick, and then we'll get to this big week of boxing action coming up. So like I just said, it's fight week. Today, both fighters, Khan and Canelo, and all the undercard fighters made their big arrivals in Las Vegas. And there was actually a pretty good crowd. It does seem that there's some actual buzz and some fan interest. So everyone's there in Vegas now, and throughout the week, all the different media events, the final press conference, the workouts, the weigh-in, they're gonna be streaming all that stuff. If you guys want, I can post the YouTube link below in the description to this video that Golden Boy sent us. And some of it's gonna be on Ring TV as well. There's also some free boxing Friday night at the T-Mobile Arena, the venue where the big main event's being held Saturday. Free boxing, it's gonna be streamed, and if you're there in Vegas, you could just walk right up and see the free boxing. So they're really putting on a spread, Golden Boy is, for this fight week promotion. I really like this, you know, reaching out to the fans and everything like that with the streaming services and stuff. That is going to be the future of this business. And I really do think, and I want to do some videos on this in the future, but it could be the future of the pay-per-view model of boxing, where it goes to more of a streaming service where, you know, a lot of people don't know, when you order a pay-per-view, half of that revenue goes to the pay-per-view provider, the cable network provider, right? If you do it on a streaming service, you might be able to cut the cost down, because if you have a different deal with the streaming service, maybe they don't get half, maybe they get 10%, 20%, whatever. Videos on that coming in the future, but I just thought that's really cool that a lot of this media week stuff will be online for you guys to see. Some other quick news and notes. Floyd Mayweather, I don't know if you guys saw this, but he's copywriting the 50 trademark, you know, because he's gonna go for number 50. I've been saying Floyd ain't retired. He's going to come back. And I get a lot of shit from some of you out there saying, stop talking about Floyd, he's retired. Let him retire in peace. He gave us so much action. He was the best thing that ever happened to boxing. Guys, he's coming back for number 50. And I'm still betting that it's going to be Danny Garcia or somebody like that, but who knows? It could be a rematch with Canelo for the middleweight title. Crazier things have happened, right? So we'll see, but he's definitely coming back for 50 because he's copywriting the 50 trademark. Pretty funny, huh? You know, going after Marciano's record, which makes absolutely no sense because there's plenty of boxers that have gone further than 49-0. Marciano was a heavyweight who fought in a completely different era, so I don't know why he brings up that record. Whatever. We're going to talk a lot more about that in the coming months and years. But one last quick thing. Francisco Vargas tested positive for Dirrell by VADA, which busted Lucas Brown a few weeks back in Russia. And all these tests, these positive tests of Dirrell that have popped up, it's not just with boxers. It's happened with a lot of soccer players recently too. It's led to some skepticism of not the testing VADA's doing. Their testing is great. It's catching the drug, right? Or it's not technically a steroid. I think it's a stimulant. Don't quote me on that. Or a hormone or something like that. But VADA's testing is catching that in people's systems. The question is, where is the Dirrell coming from? And there apparently have been studies done in Mexico and I think in other places where they have found that there is large contamination in the meat in certain countries with the way that they feed the animals and everything like that. And they've tested athletes. I think they did a test with soccer players not too long ago where they tested guys who were clean, that they were monitoring, and guys versus guys that I think were eating a certain kind of meat or something. And the test came up to show that Dirrell was like all over the place. I don't remember, don't quote me, my brain is scattered in a million different directions right now, but I say all this because the fight with Francisco Vargas, Orlando Salido is still going forward on June 4th here at StubHub Center, and I'm glad it is. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite. Look, when Lucas Brown tested positive for Tributerol in Russia, you guys could go back and look on the record. I was saying, hey, this sucks, but let's not, throw the man, at the fire yet, because he was claiming that he didn't do anything wrong, and he had been tested by VADA previous to the fight and passed. It's the same thing here. So they're talking about different types of tests they can do, where perhaps they start testing people's hair. There was a really good article on Leave It in the Ring. Check that out. Leave It in the Ring, the website. Gabriel Montoya wrote a very good article about this, where maybe they could start testing hair, because that way they can time when the Tributerol hit your system, because your hair grows. So they can test, depending on the length of your hair, they can determine when it entered your system. And if it's been in your system for 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, obviously you're doing something, you're using it. But if it just hit your system in the last day or so, then perhaps you did eat some contaminated meat. So the whole thing with Tributerol, I think we're gonna see and hear a lot more about this coming up. But that's it right now for news and notes. Let's get into the review of last week's action. All right, so there was a lot of PBC last week, and a lot of the stuff delivered, man. Friday night in New Jersey, both Dirrell brothers won. Anthony Dirrell scored a first-round knockout of Caleb Truax. Really a fight that proved nothing. Truax, you can't, take anything away from him, but he's not an elite-level fighter, a top 10 guy or anything like that. Dirrell caught him early it was actually like halfway through the first round, I believe. And he just jumped on him. And I want to say he dropped him twice. I can't remember for sure. But once he caught him, you saw Truax, the way that he responded, you knew the fight was over. Andre won a decision over Blake Caparello, the Australian fighter with a 24% knockout ratio, who was destroyed by Sergey Kovalev a couple years ago. And Caparello dropped Andre Dirrell in the second round of this fight, and it went to distance. So, Dirrell got the win, Andre, but rather disappointing win. So it was interesting to see the trajectory of the two Dirrell brothers. It's just kind of interesting, because Andre was always seen as the better one in that fight years ago with Arthur Abraham, really with a cheap shot, that he should have been suspended for throwing that punch to the back of his head. It just seems that Andre Dirrell has not been the same since. But the guy who stole the show on that PBC, I think it was PBC on Spike Friday, was Jonathan Guzman, who's a 26-year-old Dominican junior featherweight, 122-pounder. He scored an 8th round stoppage over Danny Rosas, dropped him twice in the fight. It was an action fight. It was entertaining. He threw a lot of punches, nice, fan-friendly, aggressive style. I really thought he stole the show on this broadcast, and I hope they bring him back soon. I hope that he's not one of these guys that there's been a few of these guys with these PBC cards where they have a really, really good performance, entertaining, and we don't see him again for 8, 9, 10 months. This guy, he needs to be back in the ring in 3 months. There's no reason why he shouldn't be back on one of these broadcasts. But Saturday, there was more PBC action. But before I get to that, a couple of fights abroad. Anselmo Moreno, you guys remember him. He's been one of the top challengers in the lower weight divisions for a while. He's just kind of been around for a while. One of those perennial contenders. He's challenged for titles. I think he's held a few titles, but he down in Panama, he beat the Thai fighter to pick up the WBC silver title at bantamweight. And that's basically like a mandatory. So now he's the mandatory for the WBC. And Hughie Fury scores a technical decision after the 7th round against Fred Cassie. This was an ugly fight. And a headbutt cut Fury very, very badly, and the doctor stepped in and stopped it. After the 7th round, it went to the cards. Fury won. Fury had fights scheduled already this summer. I think there was no opponent yet, but he had fights, I believe, in June and July. They were going to keep him busy. Because of this cut, it's so nasty, those fights are now off. So he's going to be out of action for a while. But getting back to the PBC stuff here in the USA, at StubHub Center. Fun PBC card, nothing but knockouts, except for the walkout bout, which was horrible, the heavyweight fight. But Jorge Lara, young Mexican kid, scores a first-round knockout over Fernando Montiel. And for Montiel, everyone's been saying it. he needs to retire. This is one of those guys that needs to be saved from himself. He just did not look good when Lara nailed him in the first round. Lara just came out guns blazing, just went after him. And as soon as he caught him, Montero just didn't look right. His punch resistance is completely gone. This guy's been in a lot of ring wars, carved out a very nice career for himself. Time to hang him up. Thomas Williams Jr. scores a second-round knockout over Edwin Rodriguez. And look, I didn't know much about Williams. Neither did most of you guys out there, I'm sure. I actually thought Rodriguez was going to win this fight by decision. But I don't know what the hell Rodriguez was doing. His fundamentals looked horrible in the first 2 rounds of this fight. And he was eating a ton of leather. He was also slinging some leather too. And he caught Williams a few times, but he had absolutely no leverage on his punches. He was wide open. I literally don't know what he did in training camp for this fight. He looked horrible. And Edwin Rodriguez has never been an elite level fighter or anything like that. He was maybe a lower top 10 super middleweight at one point. Maybe. He was on the bubble. But he's, not a top guy, but he looked like a club fighter. He looked worse than a club fighter. He looked like a guy fighting in a tough man competition. And Thomas Williams Jr. just caught him with a great counter shot. And as I said, Rodriguez had been taking shots for the full first, almost through the end of the second round, and was softened up. And finally, Williams got him with the right shot. Rodriguez was done. It was an entertaining fight, but there wasn't much skill on display. Even Williams, the way he was throwing, he was throwing a hook. He was throwing from the southpaw stance, but he wasn't stopping here. He was going all the way through, and his feet were leaving the ground. And, he wasn't turning over the right way. His balance was off. It was just a crazy looking fight, but it was fun, But the main event, everyone's talking about that. So Andre Berto, Victor Ortiz can't be in a bad fight together. This time around, look, I picked Berto. I didn't think it'd go exactly like this. It was pretty interesting. He scores a 4th round knockout over Ortiz. The opening round, Ortiz gets cut. I want to say it was a headbutt. I don't remember for sure. But that seemed to wake him up a little bit. And he was fighting well in the first couple rounds. It seemed once he got cut, he just kind of had this focus and sense of urgency. And Berto looked really, really tight. I tweeted about that while I was watching the fight. I thought he looked really tense and really tight. And it was kind of a push jab from Ortiz that dropped Berto in the second round. It wasn't a bad shot. He wasn't hurt. But Berto was so tight, his feet weren't really under him, that Ortiz almost pushed him down. It wasn't even a snapping kind of jab. It was kind of a, ugh. And Berto went down, but then Berto kind of woke up. And I still thought Ortiz was fighting fairly well, but Berto just nailed him with a beautiful right uppercut. And even though Berto threw it from the outside, he did it in such a way where he had the better angle on Ortiz. And he kind of dipped and reached around and then went up. It was a crazy angle, and you got so much torque and leverage on it. Ortiz didn't see it coming. He thought it was just a feint. The way Berto threw it isn't the textbook way to throw an uppercut, but man, that's a punch I'd like to see more from him, because he had mad crazy leverage on it when Ortiz was done. He went down, his eyes looked bad. He got up, he tried to fight on. He took a few more shots, took them, but then there was just too much of a follow-up. He went down again. And, the ref gave him a chance to continue. He beat the count, and Ortiz pretty much said, I'm done. Now, the fan reaction. Fans were throwing shit. They were screaming. There was people on Twitter calling Ortiz a quitter. It was bad, right? And I don't know if you guys heard about this or not, but there was a guy who threw, I want to say, pizza in a pizza box at Ortiz as he was walking out of the arena. And he assaulted Victor Ortiz. Security beat the shit out of this guy, and he deserved it. He was a drunk asshole. Look, man, I understand why you might be frustrated, But don't fucking assault the fighter as he's walking out of the arena. That's fucking ridiculous. It was obvious that Victor Ortiz was badly concussed. And that's one thing about doing a post-fight interview in the ring when you're concussed. Victor Ortiz sounded like a moron in the post-fight interview minutes after the fight. And Ortiz isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, okay? He's not going to win any Mensa awards or anything like that. He's not exactly bright. But in that condition, his corner his management, somebody should have went to the network people and said, look, man, our guy is in no condition to talk right now, and got him the hell out of the ring and got him to the medical people to get some treatment. But as a stupid drunk fan, you're going to make that even worse by assaulting the guy. It just makes everything look bad. And whoever that guy was, I hope that security got his name and his info and he's never let back at StubHub again. That's the kind of shit we don't need. Last but not least, it was PBC on Showtime from Washington, D.C. and some interesting scoring with these two main events. The main event, Badou Jack wins a majority decision over Lucian Bute. And here are the scores. Okay, 114, 114 twice, and 117, 111. Jack defends his WBC super middleweight title. I don't know how the hell two judges saw this a draw. I thought, I mean, I could live with it, but I thought that Jack clearly won. I thought that Jack won about 7-8 rounds of this fight fairly easily. Bute did close the distance in the final few rounds. It seemed like Badou Jack got tired, and Bute was able to kind of have a recovery or rebound at the end there. But I thought that Jack just won the first half, the first 2/3 of the fight fairly clearly, and it was a little too late from Bute. So I don't understand a majority draw. For some of you guys out there saying, "Oh, the fix is in," Jack is the house fighter, so that doesn't make any sense. It's just judges see weird shit sometimes, and it's hard to understand what's in their head. But two of those judges that scored that a draw, I'd want to get them in a room. And look, the 117, 111 is a little too wide for me. Even that's a little too wide. Just all three of these scores to me, I just want to sit them down in the room, watch the fight with these three judges and say, what were you seeing? This should have been like a 116, 112, 115, 113 at the closest. But a draw, I just don't get it. Either way, Jack keeps his title. James Degale gets a unanimous decision over Rogelio Medina to defend his IBF title. To me, this is the more egregious decision. Two judges had it 117, 111. One had it 116, 112. And I'm fine with Degale getting the victory, but I don't see how you give him any more than 7 rounds. I thought this was a very, very close fight. I know a lot of people felt that Medina won the fight. I saw cards from people I trust ranging 115 to 113 either way. For two judges to have it 117, 111, and look, let's be real here, Degale is the house guy. Of all the 4 fighters I just mentioned that were featured on this Showtime broadcast, he's the house guy. He's the undefeated guy, Olympic medalist. He's the goods, right? And this whole thing is set up for him to go against Badou Jack now. They're supposed to unify titles later this year. And Degale is the quote-unquote money guy. He's the guy that, if you're the promoter, you're the management, he's the guy you want to win. But I just don't understand this scoring. If either of these was going to be a majority draw, you figure it would have been Degale Medina. The Mexican did very, very well in this fight, Medina, and he just needs to keep doing what he's doing. The fans saw it. He should be in a good fight, a big TV fight again later down the road. For Jack and Degale, look, I know I'm going to get some shit for this because I know a lot of the UK guys really are big on Degale. I'm just not sold on the guy. And I've never been sold on Badou Jack. Quality fighters, but I don't see anything special. And to me right now, super middleweight is wide open. And there's no one guy that I look there and I'm like, man, this guy is going to clean out this division, right? Most divisions, you have 2 or 3 guys at the top that you really think, oh, once these guys fight, you know, we're going to get that top guy that we know is the clear champ, right? We already know that at middleweight, that's Gennady Golovkin. But you look at light heavyweight, it's going to be between Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward. And then you've got a couple young guys coming up, like Beterbiev, that might challenge them, right? But it's top heavy. You've got guys at the top where you know this is the brass of the division. At super middleweight right now, I don't see anything there. And this has been a division that has, for a while now, generally speaking, been one of the hotter divisions in boxing. And right now, I'm just not big on it, man. So Gilberto Ramirez has a title now. If Jack and Degale unify titles later this year, that creates a clear number 1. That creates a linear champ, if you will. But I just don't see a star there. I don't see a pound for pound type of guy at super middleweight. But maybe once these guys, these top titleists, start fighting each other, maybe somebody will emerge. For Degale after the fight to say he thought he clearly won and Medina didn't even touch him, dude was busted up. He was busted up. He was huffing and puffing. He looked tired. He looked a little worn out. Medina looked good. So, you know, for him to say that, look, again, you're interviewing a guy right after a fight, a tough, hard, long fight. He's emotional and all that, but he didn't necessarily handle the aftermath very well. It would have been better if Degale had said, look, this was a really, really close fight. The fans want to see it again. We can do it again. I felt I won, but it was a close fight. I give this kid his credit. I don't know. He could have been a little more humble about it. But that's all the action for last week. Now let's get into the big card this week. Real quick, just to reiterate about the Friday night card, and I'll be tweeting about this more throughout the week and giving you guys links and everything, but Pablo Cesar Cano and Alan Sanchez are fighting each other in the main event Friday night from Vegas. This is going to be streamed live on Ring TV, so you can check it out. For you guys who don't know, Cano is 29-4 and 1 with 21 knockouts. He's been in with several top fighters over the last few years. He's lost some controversial decisions. There were guys like, I think he fought Paulie Malignaggi a few years back, and a lot of people felt that he should have got the decision in that fight. And there's been a couple fights like that for him. But he's been in with some good fighters. 5'9", 70-inch reach, started as a lightweight. This is a welterweight bout. For Sanchez, he's from the Bay Area. He's an American. 17-3-1, only 9 knockouts. A lot taller, though. He's 6'1", 76-inch reach, 25 years old. So he's the taller, longer, younger fighter. And you figure these two guys will make for a good style matchup. This should be a good fight. And then the co-feature, I think this one's going to be even better. Martin Quintero, it's a Mexican southpaw, 28-6 with 24 knockouts. This is a lightweight fight. He's going up against Peter Petrov, the Russian who lives in Spain and speaks Spanish. So it's interesting to see a Russian guy talking shit in Spanish while he's fighting. But you might remember him. He won the Boxino lightweight tournament in 2014. He's 36-4-2 with 17 knockouts. Doesn't hit with a lot of pop, but a very good, technically sound boxer. So I think both of these fights should be fun and entertaining, and they're free. If you're in Vegas, just go to the arena. There it is. Just walk right up. It's free. If you have internet access, stream it. It should be a lot of fun. And it will be kind of like a pre-game warm-up to the festivities the following night. Look, on Friday, you're going to have the weigh-in, right, which is going to be streamed live, and everyone can see that. And then after the weigh-in, you know, the party kind of gets started at the weigh-in, and then you got some free fights. What's not to like? And it's Vegas, so you just party from Friday night all the way into Saturday when the big fight happens. Before I get to the Vegas fights, real quick, actually a couple of fights overseas in Hamburg, Germany, Saturday. Derek Chisora, remember him? He's going up against Kubrat Pulev. This could be a fun, interesting heavyweight fight. Chisora's 5-0 since he lost to Tyson Fury in 2014 against, you know, shit competition, but still, he's got a little winning streak going. Kubrat Pulev is 2-0 since his loss to Vladimir Klitschko in 2014. So both of these guys, you know, from bad losses a couple years back, have been on the comeback trail. They're fighting each other in a crossroads type of fight. You figure the loser of this should probably, I don't want to say retire, but they're done. They're absolutely done as a heavyweight contender. The winner of this fight could possibly work themselves into a title fight, maybe over the next year or so. Could be an interesting style matchup. In Manchester, Anthony Crolla going up against Ismael Barroso from Venezuela. Barroso beat Kevin Mitchell last year in December to win the WBA interim lightweight title, and that's how he's getting this title shot at Crolla. You guys probably don't know a lot about Barroso, but he's 19-0, 2 draws. He's got 18 knockouts. The guy hits with a lot of power. He got Kevin Mitchell out of there last year. I gotta say, I mean, this is one of those fights where if it goes to the cards, I like Crolla to defend his title. I don't think Barroso is gonna let it go to the cards. I'm picking the upset special here. I'm taking the Venezuelan to beat Crolla on his home territory by late TKO and grab the full WBA lightweight title. All right, I've built up the suspense long enough. Let's get to the Canelo-Khan card. Really, really great undercard, all right? And let's start with these fights. Frankie Gomez going up against Mauricio Herrera. Now, I've briefly talked about this fight when this whole thing was announced, but just go over it again. Gomez is 20-0, 13 knockouts, 6-year pro, but he's had a lot of problems. He's had problems with mental focus, discipline issues, and stuff like that. He was considered like one of the top prospects at Golden Boy, and then he started having all these problems, right? Well, this is his big chance up against Mauricio Herrera, who is almost 36 years old, will be 36, I want to say in a few weeks, at the end of this month. He's lost 4 of his last 8, although several of those we could say he got robbed, but he's been in there matched tough for the past few years, and he's taken a lot of punishment in those fights. This is Gomez's big chance, and I think he realizes that. Everything I'm hearing from his camp, from just the people I know in those circles, is that Gomez is in shape. He looks focused. He looks ready. Expect a coming out party from Frankie Gomez in this fight. You heard it here first, okay? David Lemieux makes his ring return since the beatdown he took to Gennady Golovkin last year, going up against Glenn Tapia. So for Lemieux, as I mentioned, this is his first fight since the loss to Triple G. He was supposed to fight a month or so ago, but remember, he missed weight, right? So will he make weight this time? All indications point to yes. From what I'm hearing, he should be fine. He should be on weight. It's all good. Much bigger fight here, much more focused, and Glenn Tapia can crack, and Lemieux knows that. So I think he's taking this one a lot more serious. For Tapia, look, he had a bad loss to James Kirkland back in 2013. I've talked about that fight before, how I felt that Steve Smoker, who's like my favorite ref, didn't have a good night that night and let Tapia take too much punishment. Has not been the same since. Tapia's last fight was a knockout loss to Michael Soro. Now that was at junior middleweight, right? Now this is going to be his first fight at 160 pounds. So he's claiming this extra weight's going to help him. It's interesting, you know, you look at him and Lemieux. Tapia is the taller guy, the longer guy. He's the naturally bigger man. He's been squeezing down to 154. Lemieux did that before, right? I think Lemieux was trying to cut down in weight and he was having trouble with it. So, you know, Lemieux's punch resistance has seemed better in recent years than it was a while back. So sometimes a few extra pounds helps with that. But with Tapia, man, I just don't know if he's going to be the same since that loss to Kirkland. Here's the question about Lemieux. Is he going to be the same since that loss to Golovkin? That's what makes this fight intriguing to me. I think that pound for pound, these two guys, Lemieux is just the better fighter. Just better, top to bottom, right? Tapia can punch. He can punch. And if he nails Lemieux, it could change things. But Lemieux is just in there with Gennady Golovkin. And Tapia doesn't punch as hard as Gennady Golovkin. So you have to favor Lemieux by stoppage in this one. But no doubt, Tapia is going to land something big. And it's going to be interesting to see how Lemieux reacts. This fight could steal the show. It could also end very quickly. I don't know. But either way, it's going to be a lot of fun. The fight that I think will steal the show, the one I'm actually most intrigued in, is Patrick Teixeira. Big, tall, undefeated, Mexican. Brazilian. Let me do that again. The fight, or should I say fighter, that I'm most excited about on this undercard is Patrick Teixeira. Undefeated Brazilian kid. Very, very tall for a middleweight. He's 5'11", 25 years old, 26-0, 22 knockouts. I've talked to you guys about him before. He's fought at LA Fight Club before, and I got a really good close-up look at him. This dude throws a million punches. Big, tall guy that throws a million punches. Likes to fight on the inside. A lot of tall guys just want to stand outside and jab and grab. Not like that at all. He'll get in there and mix it up with you. He's kind of like a Gilberto Ramirez in a way, and but throws even more punches. Throws even more punches than that guy. He's going up against Curtis Stevens, who's lost 2 of his last 4, but those 2 losses were to Gennady Golovkin and Hassam Nadam, who's a very good quality fighter. Here's the thing. Stevens is 5'7", and like I said, Teixeira is almost 6 feet tall. So the size difference here will be big. The difference with Stevens is Stevens can crack. He can still punch. And Teixeira, I think his knockout ratio is because a lot of the guys he's fought were just lower tier opposition. He doesn't really have an eraser, in my opinion, one-punch knockout power. So Stevens should be able to hang with him. And as long as there's no cuts or anything like that, if Stevens can get on the inside and throw some uppercuts and some hooks and start chopping down a tree, this fight could get very, very interesting. Part of me thinks it might look a lot like when Ramirez fought Arthur Abraham a month ago on the Pacquiao-Bradley 3 undercard. Part of me thinks it might go that route, but I don't know. I think Stevens is more fluid than Abraham. He throws with better power, with better leverage, and I actually expect this to be a pretty entertaining fight. But main event. I've gone back and forth on this one. When it was first announced, I reacted like all of you guys. And what the hell is this crap, right? And then I started to think, you know what? Amir Khan is going to win those early rounds because he's the better athlete. He's faster, better footwork, just a better boxer in a lot of ways in terms of speed and positioning, footwork, stuff like that. Canelo can't cut the ring off, sticking all this. But then I thought about some more. When is the last time Amir Khan fought a guy who could really punch? I can't think of the last opponent he fought that was known as a power puncher, right? And let alone a power puncher at junior middleweight, which is really what Canelo, this fight's at 155 pounds. Let's be real, this is a junior middleweight fight. Canelo isn't a one-punch knockout artist kind of guy, but he's got power. When he can line you up and he can hit you, he does punch accurately when he sees the shot. The problem with Canelo is he tries to be too pretty with it and he wants to be too perfect with it. So he doesn't just throw punches in bunches. But when he does hit you, it has an impact. I was ringside when he fought Erislandy Lara a couple years ago in Vegas, and just seeing the way Lara reacted to the body shots. Canelo moved him, and Lara was running all night long. He would pot shot, but he was mostly running, especially in those later rounds. And even if you look at Miguel Cotto would get in and land a couple of pity-pat shots and get out because he knew the big, hard shot was coming. And Canelo did just enough to basically lose what looked like Cotto did just enough to lose what looked like a competitive decision to Canelo. And Kirkland, Kirkland is who he is. But Canelo throws with enough power. And Khan hasn't faced a fighter with power in so long that I'm starting to lean towards Canelo by knockout in this fight. And you also have to take into consideration, Canelo fought Floyd Mayweather, Erislandy Lara, 2 boxers who used movement and speed, and he went 24 rounds with those two guys. Now, against Floyd, he was completely shut out. Against Lara, they pretty much fought an even fight. I scored it for Canelo by 1 point in that fight. It was very, very close, right? But those two fighters, the experience he gained from those two fighters, I do think will help him with Khan. Khan doesn't run like Lara. He's a little more like Floyd, where he's going to stand in the pocket with you. But Floyd knows how to do all those crafty things where he'll hold you, he'll forearm you, he'll elbow you, he'll use his head, he'll do whatever he's got to do to get you off of him, and he's better with angles. Khan doesn't do those things. Khan won't tie up. He'll try to, but the brute strength of Canelo is going to help him in this fight. And where I'm leaning now is Khan's going to win some early rounds, and it's actually going to be competitive early, but Canelo is going to go to the body. I think the mistake he made with Floyd is he tried to go upstairs too much, and it's really hard to hit Floyd squarely on the head, especially if you're trying to be perfect with it. With Khan, he's got to go to the body, even if he's hitting shoulders, even if he's hitting arms, chest, whatever it is. And I think that's what his team is prepping for. I think they realize that early on, just headhunting isn't going to get it done against this guy. If they go to the body, I do think Khan's going to slow down those middle rounds. And originally I was saying Canelo by decision in a fight that's more competitive and, quite frankly, disappointing than people think. But I'm starting to lean towards Canelo by late technical knockout. And that's what I'm saying with this fight for now. Could change at the weigh-in. We could see a surprise at the weigh-in. Maybe Canelo has a problem getting down all the way to 155. That might change my prediction. But as it stands right now, Canelo late technical knockout.